help us understand better. What do you guys do?
I'll try not to be too wordy in answering this, but I think there's a couple of important points that have to be laid out. And the first one is the definition of what an SRO actually is. And there actually is a federal definition. And I'm not going to bore you with reading the whole thing to you, but I'll summarize it by saying that an SRO, School Resource Officer, is a trained, sworn, certified law enforcement officer. And the idea is they should be deployed in a community-based policing project, and is the best way to say that. And that should be the approach to school-based policing, community-based policing. And as a matter of fact, when we train officers, the #1 goal is to bridge the gap between law enforcement and youth. At the end of the day, that's the #1 goal. And so, can I sit here and say that everybody does it that way? No, because not everybody goes through the proper training. But our members do, and that's the message we want to get out. So what we're looking for are officers that really have a desire to work with youth, have the experience working with youth, have the right motivations. There's a collaborative effort going on between the school district and the law enforcement agency, and the officers are truly in there in a community-based policing environment. They're reaching out to students. We teach what's called the SRO triad concept. And that is that the SRO certainly has the role of being a law enforcement officer, no doubt about that. But they also are involved in informal counseling. And, if you're familiar with law enforcement officers at all, a lot of what we do out on the street, outside of the school, is informal counseling. You go to a domestic dispute, and the last thing we really want to do is take anybody to jail. So we kind of do some informal counseling to try and help resolve that. It's a lot of what we do. And then the other piece of it, the third piece, is the role of education. We train officers and encourage them to get into classrooms with students, which is a great way to connect. But officers also have a lot of experience to bring to bear to educate students. Just for example, at the high school level, we've got a lot of students who are becoming drivers. So the experience we can bring to bear in terms of distracted driving, drunk driving, just driving skills overall, can really make a huge impact. So those are the kind of things that we're doing as SROs.
So what do you say to parents some of whom might feel, upon just hearing, okay, there's a police officer or law enforcement officer in the school, maybe they don't feel so comfortable with that?
You know what's really interesting about that? SROs have been around since the 1950s. Most people don't realize that, but they really began to make their climb around 1994. And you can look at some of the data. It's kind of interesting. That's really when the climb started. And yet we had about 15 high-profile school shootings in the mid to late 90s that actually came after that spike started. And I remember when we started it in my own department. Again, I wasn't involved with it at the time that it started. And I can remember when the officer first started at the high school, that was the first place they started. I do remember some people commenting, what are the police doing there? Why are the police at school so much? Well, as this program became more accepted and people saw what was going on, the comment, if the police car wasn't at the school, it became the reverse comment. Where's the SRO? Why isn't why they're not here today? And so if it's done the right way, and I underscore the right way, I believe that parents as a whole come to accept what's going on and appreciate it. Some of the best relationships I had in the school environment were with parents, and I wasn't expecting that. And those friendships still go on today. And so that was a very valuable resource to us to have those relationships with parents also.
Just to jump on those, we have 54 school officers here at Boston University. I consider all my officers SROs. They do exactly like this. One law enforcement officers, they're full arrest powers, fully on to investigate absolutely everything that happens here. But they're also very involved in the community. We do public safety week, we do coffee with the cops. Yes, we give away free coffee. Yes, we share our donuts. But it's a breakdown of barriers, so they get to know us and they get to trust us. So when something happens, they feel confident to call us.
Energy ring, right? Not donuts. Energy ring.
Yes. From a superintendent's point of view, it's really important. The training is very important, but also the personality of the individual, because that's going to be key in how they relate to students. And I was telling Mo that in another district that I was in, the only person who got a standing ovation at graduation was the SRO every year. Because over those 4 years, that person had developed a totally unique relationship with all of the students in the school. They become a part of the team, they meet with the principal, the assistant principals, they get to know the kids, and also they serve another purpose of bridging the weekend to Monday. So they're the bridge between Friday and Monday. So when you come back together as a school community on Monday, you're able to tie into the knowledge that the SRO has of kind of what was happening in your community over the weekend. And it really becomes a very proactive role in a school district also.
Can I add one more thing? I'm sorry, and I'll be quiet about this, but I think this is really, really important. One of the things we get hit with sometimes are the issues of arrests. We are sometimes, people will say, all that's happening is you're going in and arresting more kids and putting them in the juvenile justice system. And I have to tell you that if the program's done the right way, it's the right officer, they're properly trained, the opposite is happening. The exact opposite is happening. And I know I'm in communication with our members. If it's the goal of an officer to go in and see how many kids they can arrest, they don't need to be there. It's clearly the wrong person. Not that we don't make arrests when they're justified, but that is not the overall goal. SROs get in there and they learn how to work with the school administration to cut those arrests down. And when the SRO is engaged and they've got the relationships, they're much more likely to be able to help kind of settle a situation down as opposed to stirring it up to the point that you've got to make an arrest. It's interesting, from 1994 to 2009, and this is data from the Department of Justice, juvenile arrest rates in this country are down by 50%, and some of you may be shocked by that. Down by 50%. Now, I'm not saying that SROs deserve all the credit for that, but I'm going to say they deserve a little bit of credit, and it's one of the things we work very hard on.
Well, I have a note here that says some Twitter questions are coming in, so I'm going to ask one of them. By the way, again, the hashtag is Safer Tomorrow. So this is from, sorry, I have a habit of identifying who the tweets are coming from when we do it on our show, so am I going to presume that you sent the tweet because you don't want to get identified? But too bad. Transparency. This is from someone who identifies as TB, who says, for Christina, what have you found impressive that law enforcement are doing training-wise? Anything you could share?
Absolutely. Law enforcement are doing a lot of amazing things. I'll speak quickly. Okay, just quick 2-minute history. Law enforcement changed everything. Is TB law enforcement or a student? Do we know? Law enforcement. Okay. ATV. Basically being proactive. So those that just don't live in this space as much as we do. After Columbine, everything shifted. So Columbine, for law enforcement, is very much campus safety started protecting the building from us. They didn't always think about us as individuals in that. And with Columbine, the response was obviously the perimeter. So they got there, they secured the perimeter, and they're not going inside for a long time. Virginia Tech, with them barricading the doors and creating that delay, changed that in a very big way. So law enforcement, the ones that I've seen that are the best and the most proactive, are the ones who continuously train, both mentally and physically. These guys are fully ready to go in and respond to situations, and also be community service leaders that they reach out. And on that level we talked about, I think being part of the safety team is not only SROs engaging in one way, but you guys on the other end. Wherever I go, I make a point to be like, hey, police officer, just in case you want to know those people. It'd be really great when your bike is stolen or your laptop is stolen, which is much more likely to happen than anything else on this, any campus. If you could say, hey, John, there are people as well. And the energy rate was just a joke, but it's maybe a good one. They have the same fears and concerns, and they really want to watch out for our well-being. So best practices, it's continuously kind of struggling with that mindset of what's the next thing that we could be waiting for. Is it a bomb? Is it a knife attack? Is it a shooter? Is it outside threats? There's a lot of great programs out there called, one is Alert, ALERRT. It's an active shooter training program. I think the ones that also take a step out and really look at how do you communicate to students and faculty and educators with K-12 higher ed in ways that they can understand. I think the best law enforcement I've interacted with are the ones that are good presenters. They understand that, we as students shouldn't have to worry about this 24/7. We as faculty shouldn't have to worry about that threat all the time. We have to communicate that in ways that they will understand. So that might mean being less forceful, more descriptive, right, of the actual threat and risk that pertains to the campus, and proactive. And free food always helps as well.
It does.
Yeah, it does. That's been tested and proven.
So I want to ask you another question that's come over Twitter. It's a really good one from Mr. Didomenica, retired lieutenant, Massachusetts State Police. Really good question. The majority of school shootings involve present and former students. What can be done to identify such students and intervene?
I think this is a really great opportunity for us to talk a little about threat assessment and threat assessment management. So,
There's a lot of identifiers. Obviously, one of the things we actually do here at Boston University is we monitor social media. We have software that we can plug into keywords, whether it's shoot, kill, die. And we monitor that social media from, I think it's 9 different sites now at this point. Facebook, Twitter, Yik Yak, to name a few. But that's one of the things, just to identify what they may be saying, because a lot of these people do put it out on social media before it happens. The other thing is just getting input from our students, faculty, and staff when somebody is starting to change their opinions, their behavior, what they're talking about, how they're starting to talk about death and dying and shooters, and oh yeah, they're agreeing with somebody who just did a shooting somewhere, and reporting to us, because at BU we do have a threat assessment team that can get together and hopefully get that student or person necessary help.
For a school situation, a smaller school situation, it's really about creating relationships with the staff and the students. And in the district that I'm in now, it's a small urban district in central Massachusetts. And I've been really surprised whenever we've done a survey of, how comfortable do you feel going to an adult or going to somebody in the school community to talk or to bring information. And we always score almost 90%, and not just one adult, but 2 or 3. So it's really building that kind of a culture. And a couple of years ago, we had a situation where 2 students came forward and they'd been hearing a conversation in the hallway that possibly involved a weapon, possibly involved other things. We took action with the school resource officer. The action was not over the top, but it was an immediate action. And it turned out that that's what it was. It was talk, it was related to other things, and once all the pieces came together, and then a few people said, well, look what you've done. Look at why did people overreact? And everyone stepped back and said, no, this is exactly what we want. We, just like you with the stone in the door, right? We would rather go through all of that and then at the end find out that, there was miscommunication there, somebody didn't hear it right or whatever, and be able to then all take a deep breath and know that nothing was going to happen, than to have people not feel they can come forward with that kind of information and then be on the end of some sort of a trauma.
Before the rest of you jump in, there's actually a follow-up question because Scott mentioned Yik Yak.
Yes.
So Robin Pinella sends us a question. Says, regarding social media, have you seen a spike in threats via anonymous apps like Yik Yak? And how can we help?
I think there was only a couple instances on Yik Yak where there was actually a threat and they did follow up. I think Yik Yak actually turned the information over to law enforcement. But we haven't seen a lot of those. If somebody thinks they're going to be confidential on Yik Yak and make a threat, I think Yik Yak's going to give the information up because they don't want to deal with that type of information.
I want to talk to you a little bit about how our K-12s are learning from the university communities, especially in terms of threat assessment. I think it's relatively a new concept for a lot of our K-12 school systems. And I know Andre's coming from mostly urban experiences, and I think that's a little bit of an exception because I think, and you can talk a little bit about this too, safety in the urban communities, safety threats and hazards have been at a higher level than some of our suburban and rural K-12 communities. So I'm finding that there's a lot of momentum behind the federal government's cease and say something, and I think we're having a lot of success with that. Where I see in a lot of our K-12 communities, particularly those suburban and rural, is the next step. So if a student comes to an administrator, if a student has the courage, or a parent has the courage, or a staff member has the courage to come forward with information, they're usually going to take that information to somebody within the school community. They're not likely to go to law enforcement first. And then there needs to be this predetermined set of steps that we go through in terms of what our threat assessment is, what steps do we do next, so that we're not making it up as we go and perhaps creating an overreaction or, God forbid, an underreaction in a real event. So I think that developing those threat assessment teams in our K-12s, just like we have in universities, where, hey, we just got a threat off of Yik Yak, the team comes together, puts their heads together, and the best decisions that tend to be made in the education communities are the ones where there's a lot of heads, there's a lot of perspectives that are coming together to make that decision. So I don't know if you have any experience there, Andre, in terms of what sort of steps or teaching or staff development or community education you provide in the K-12 to keep that process going. So it's not just see something, say something, it's the next step of do something. What do we do? Or is it okay for us as educators to now share that information with law enforcement? Are we violating FERPA? What types of channels do you create in order to make that happen, that next step?
Unfortunately, in most of our schools now, it's part of the regular training. So just like we have a whole list of training that needs to be done, this is the regular part of training. And I think you're right, it's the interesting contradiction is that a lot of the urban districts are more aware of this, more alert of it, and thinking about it more. But when you see where actually most of the major situations have taken place, they have not been in urban districts. They have been in suburban districts. So there's sometimes you can feel comfortable and you can feel less, it's like people leave their doors unlocked because they've never been broken into. But once you are, you have something different. So I think that same kind of alertness that's already been part of an urban approach to safety is now a much more common experience.